I thought I had found love, the kind of love that saves you, the kind of love that makes you believe in forever. But forever was a lie. The man I married, the man I gave my trust, my heart, and my name to was never mine. He belonged to the night, to the parties, to the women who smiled when I was not looking. I married a playboy, and I never saw the truth until it was too late. When I first met him, I thought my life was finally complete. His smile was wide, his eyes were warm, and he spoke to me as if I was the only person in the world who mattered. I was shy, quiet, a girl who lived more in books than in real life. But he was light, laughter, a storm of confidence I never had. We met at a small family wedding. I was helping my aunt serve food, arranging plates, smiling politely at guests I barely knew. And then I saw him standing in the corner with a group of boys, all of them laughing, but his laugh was the loudest, the brightest. He looked at me once, just once, and I felt my face turn red. He walked straight toward me without hesitation. "Hi, I'm Daniel," he said, his voice smooth, his words easy. No one had ever spoken to me that way. I whispered my name back, my hands shaking as I held a plate. That was the beginning. The first spark of something I thought was love. He made me feel seen. Every morning after that, I waited for his calls. Every evening, I checked my phone again and again, smiling like a fool whenever his name appeared on the screen. He asked about my day, my dreams, even the silly little things, like what I ate for lunch. And I thought this is what love is supposed to feel like, safe, warm, and full of promise. My parents were happy too. He was charming with them, always respectful, always smiling. My mother would say, "You're lucky, my child, men like him are rare." And I believed her, because I wanted to. Soon he proposed. It wasn't fancy, no roses, no candles, just him standing in front of me one evening, holding a small ring with nervous eyes. "Marry me, let's build a life together," he said. And without a second thought, I said yes. Our wedding was small but beautiful. I wore a simple white dress, he wore a dark suit. People clapped, cheered, and threw flowers as we walked out. I remember thinking, this is the happiest day of my life. The first months of marriage felt like a dream. He would take me out for dinner, surprise me with little gifts, whisper sweet words in the middle of the night. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt. He made me believe that nothing could ever come between us. But even then, even in those golden days, I noticed small shadows, little cracks I ignored. Sometimes he would come home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. Sometimes he would leave his phone face down on the table, his smile too quick when I asked who had called. And sometimes, just sometimes, his eyes would drift away when I spoke, as if he was far, far away. I told myself, I was imagining it, that every marriage had secrets, that every man needed space. I convinced myself because the truth was too frightening. Still, there were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering, does he really love me the way I love him? But I never said it out loud, never dared to break the fragile dream I was living in. One evening, we attended a friend's party. He held my hand as we entered, but the moment his friends came into view, his grip loosened and he drifted toward them. I watched him laugh with strangers, watched women lean close as he whispered something in their ears. And in that moment, for the very first time, I felt a chill, like something deep inside me was warning me. Something was about to break. Life with Daniel was never quiet. He loved the city lights, the parties, the endless noise of people. And I loved staying home, cooking, reading, making our little apartment feel warm and safe. At first, our differences felt exciting, like two worlds blending together. He would drag me out to late-night dinners, and I would pull him back into cozy evenings on the couch, with tea and old movies. We laughed about it often. He used to say, "That's why we work. You keep me grounded, and I keep you alive." I believed him. I believed that love could survive differences, survive anything. My parents adored him more with every passing day. Whenever we visited, my father would clap him on the back, proud of the way Daniel spoke about his future plans. My mother served him more food than anyone else, smiling as he praised her cooking. He was the perfect son-in-law, the man who made their daughter happy. And to be fair, he did try in his way. He would bring me flowers randomly, leave little notes in my bag that said, "Thinking of you." Sometimes, in the middle of the night, he would whisper, "I don't deserve you," and hold me tighter. And I would smile in the darkness, my heart full, believing his words. But still, little things unsettled me. The way his phone was always locked. The way he sometimes stepped out to take calls in the hallway. The way his shirt sometimes smelled faintly of perfume, sweet and heavy, unlike mine. I asked once softly, "Daniel, why do you come home so late?" He kissed my forehead and said, "Work, my love. I'm building our future, don't worry." And I nodded because I wanted to believe. But late at night, doubt crept into my chest like a slow poison. I would look at him, sleeping peacefully beside me, and wonder if I was truly the only one in his heart. Still, there were beautiful moments that held me close to him, like the weekend we traveled to the countryside. We stayed in a small cottage, just the two of us. He cooked breakfast badly, burning the eggs, laughing until tears rolled down his cheeks. We spent hours walking in the fields, holding hands, dreaming about a big house and children running around. Those days felt real, felt unshakable. But happiness, I would learn, can sometimes be the strongest illusion, because right under it, cracks can spread silently until one day, everything falls apart. One evening, I noticed something strange. Daniel's best friend, Mark, had come over for dinner. The two of them laughed, drank, and spoke about old times. But in the middle of their conversation, I caught Mark glancing at me with something in his eyes, pity, almost warning. I couldn't explain it, but it made my stomach twist. Later, when Mark left, I asked Daniel about it. Why did he look at me like that? Daniel laughed it off too quickly. You're imagining things. And once again, I swallowed my doubts. But that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something I wasn't being told, something big enough to change everything. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Daniel became busier, always on the phone, always rushing out. He started canceling dinners, missing family visits, forgetting promises he once held close. And though he always returned with excuses, with smiles, with soft kisses, the warmth I felt began to fade, replaced by a quiet fear I carried alone. It was during one family gathering that I realized just how fragile my world was. We were sitting at the dinner table, surrounded by laughter and chatter. And I looked at him, at the man who once made me feel like the center of the universe. His eyes were on his phone, his smile was somewhere else. And suddenly, I felt invisible. Invisible in my own marriage, invisible in my own life. I forced a smile, laughed when people expected me to laugh, served food to my parents. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "Something is wrong. Something is about to break." The days stretched into weeks, and the silence between us began to feel heavier than any argument. Daniel still smiled, still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, but his eyes weren't with me anymore. I tried to fight it. I cooked his favorite meals, I dressed up for him, I asked him about his day with genuine excitement. But more often than not, his answers were short, distracted, and sometimes he didn't answer at all. One evening, as I set the table, I asked gently, "Do you ever feel like we're drifting apart?" He looked up at me, startled, then forced a laugh. "Drifting? No, darling, it's just work. You know I'm doing this for us." And with that, he kissed my cheek and changed the subject. But the kiss felt empty. And the words, "for us," they sounded like a shield, something he repeated because he knew it worked on me. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if I didn't, then what did I have left? At night, I began noticing little things. The way his phone buzzed at strange hours. The way he kept it under his pillow, as though it were a treasure chest he couldn't risk me opening. The way he sometimes showered the moment he came home, as though washing away invisible traces. One night, I heard him whispering in the living room. I tiptoed closer, heart racing, straining to catch words. His voice was low, urgent. "No, she doesn't know. Yes, I'll see you tomorrow." Then silence. When I entered the room, he jumped. "Oh, I was just talking to Mark," he said too quickly, smiling too wide. I nodded, pretending to accept it. But inside, I felt a storm rising. The worst part was the loneliness. He was there, physically present, but his warmth was gone. It was like living with a stranger who wore my husband's face. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since my teenage years. The pages filled with questions. Is it me? Did I do something wrong? Am I not enough for him? I wrote until my tears blurred the ink, until my chest felt empty enough to sleep. And then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday. We were supposed to go to dinner with my parents, but at the last moment he said, "I can't make it. There's a work emergency." I smiled tightly, hiding my disappointment, and went alone. When I returned home later, the apartment was dark, but his jacket was missing. His shoes were missing. I checked the time, almost midnight. I told myself to stay calm. Maybe he was working late. Maybe he had a drink with colleagues. But the doubt, the doubt screamed louder than reason. I curled up on the couch, waiting for him, but sleep betrayed me. When I woke up at dawn, the door creaked open. Daniel walked in, hair messy, eyes red, smelling faintly of alcohol, and something else. A perfume. Not mine. Not anything I had ever worn. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. He froze just for a second, then smiled. "Work dinner. It went late. I didn't want to wake you." And he kissed me, quick, dismissive, and walked straight to the shower. I sat there, my body trembling, my heart breaking in silence. I knew. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew. From that day forward, I watched him differently. Every smile, every excuse, every kiss, was it real or just a cover? Was I holding on to a man who had already left me in his heart? The world outside remained the same. People still thought we were the perfect couple. My parents still adored him. Our friends still admired our love story. But inside my chest, something fragile had cracked. And though I kept smiling, kept playing the role of the happy wife, a voice inside me whispered, "Something is about to break. Very soon." The perfume never left my mind. Every time I washed his shirt, folded his sleeves, or leaned into him for a hug, I searched for it, the faintest trace of something that wasn't mine. Sometimes I smelled it. Sometimes I thought I imagined it. But the doubt lived in me now, like a second heartbeat. Daniel grew more distant. He still smiled, still acted like everything was fine, but his presence felt thin, like smoke slipping through my fingers. When he sat across the dinner table, his phone was more important than my words. When he held me at night, his arms felt heavy, like a duty rather than love. One evening, I asked carefully, "Do you still love me, Daniel?" The question hung between us. For a moment, I thought he didn't hear. Then he laughed lightly and kissed my forehead. "Of course I do. Don't be silly." But he didn't meet my eyes. And deep inside, I realized love doesn't need to be defended with laughter. I began noticing more. The late-night showers. The business trips that never had receipts. The sudden interest in his appearance. Expensive cologne. Ironed shirts. Hair styled perfectly. He had never been vain before. The worst part? He seemed happy. Genuinely. Effortlessly happy, but not with me. There was a sparkle in his eyes again. A liveliness in his step. The kind of energy I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage. And it broke me. Because while I was shrinking with fear and confusion, someone else was giving him joy. I tried to hold on. I suggested a weekend trip, just the two of us. He smiled apologetically. "I can't, darling. The timing isn't right." I asked him to watch movies with me, the way we used to. He said he was too tired. I tried to dress up, surprise him with candlelit dinners, but he was distracted, distant. Always somewhere else. The more I tried, the more invisible I felt. I started to hate myself for it. Why was I chasing a man who clearly didn't want to be caught? One night, lying awake beside him, I whispered into the darkness, "Who are you with when you're not with me?" He stirred, half asleep, and murmured, "Shh," before turning away. But I wasn't talking to him. I was talking to myself, to the aching, suffocating question clawing at my chest. Then came the breaking point. It was a Saturday afternoon. He said he had to meet a client. I nodded, pretending not to care, but when the door closed behind him, my body moved before my mind could stop it. I followed him. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I drove 2 cars behind, my heart pounding like a drum in my throat. He didn't go toward the office. He didn't go toward any client. He drove across town, to a quiet street lined with little cafes and boutique shops. And then he stopped. I watched, frozen, as he stepped out of the car and a woman appeared. She was young, beautiful, confident. She smiled at him with a glow I hadn't seen on my own face in years. And Daniel smiled back, the kind of smile he hadn't given me in months. They walked together, laughing, brushing hands. And then, without hesitation, he leaned down and kissed her. My world shattered in silence. I didn't cry. Not then. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, forcing myself to breathe. Because the tears, the heartbreak, they would come later. Right now, all I felt was numbness. And beneath that numbness, a spark. A spark of something darker, sharper, more dangerous. I whispered to myself, "So it's true." And in that moment, I knew. Life as I had known it was over. Something had broken. And soon, something else would have to break too. That night, I pretended nothing was wrong. I cooked dinner. I smiled. I kissed him goodnight. But behind my calm face, the seed had been planted. The seed of revenge. The days that followed felt like a cruel theater. Daniel played his part, smiling at me, kissing my cheek, asking about dinner. And I played mine, laughing softly, nodding at the right times, pretending I hadn't seen him with her. But inside, every word, every gesture, every touch burned like fire. I knew the truth now. And once you know, you cannot unknow. I found myself studying him with new eyes. When he claimed he had to work late, I heard only lies. When he turned his phone face down on the table, I imagined her name glowing on the screen. When he hugged me, I felt the distance in his arms, like he was holding 2 lives in one body, and I was the life he was slowly discarding. Yet I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I watched. I listened. I gathered every little piece of his deceit and stored it inside me like a box of knives. He thought I was blind. He thought I was weak. But in truth, I was waiting. There were moments when the pain felt unbearable. In the shower, I pressed my hands against my face to muffle the sobs that tore through me. At night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had become the stranger in my own marriage. How had the man I trusted with my whole heart turned into the man who broke it? The betrayal was not just the affair. It was the lies, the laughter, the way he still let me cook for him, care for him, love him, while giving the best of himself to someone else. But grief, I learned, has stages. At first, it was sorrow, then disbelief, then anger, and finally, a cold clarity. I stopped asking questions. I stopped begging for his attention. I stopped trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. Because deep inside, another thought had begun to bloom. He doesn't know who he's hurting. And one day soon, he will. My mother always said, "Revenge is for the strong. The weak just cry." I had never understood those words until now. Daniel believed I was weak. He believed I would endure anything, forgive anything, accept anything. But he was wrong. The turning point came one evening when he returned late again, the faint trace of perfume still clinging to his shirt. He smiled casually as if nothing were amiss and asked, "Did you miss me?" And I looked at him, really looked at him. This man I had loved, this man who had betrayed me, and for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw my enemy. I smiled sweetly, answering, "Of course I did." But behind that smile, my mind was already working. What he didn't know was that the game had changed. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his shadow, his watcher, his reckoning. And every secret he thought was safe was about to become my weapon. That night, lying in bed, I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "The storm is coming." And I knew, with a shiver of both fear and thrill, that nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. The truth didn't explode in my face all at once. It leaked, drop by drop, like poison into a glass. At first, it was the perfume. Then it was the lipstick stain I pretended not to see on his collar. Then, the hotel receipt folded carelessly in his wallet. But the moment that tore away any last shred of denial was the phone. One evening, while Daniel showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I never touched it. I believed in trust and privacy. But that night, my hands moved on their own. I picked it up. The message glowed on the screen. "Speech balloon. I can't stop thinking about last night. When will you tell her?" And just like that, my world ended. I dropped the phone as if it burned me, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break my ribs. The shower water roared in the background, Daniel humming, oblivious, while I sat frozen with the proof in my hands. When he came out, smiling, towel around his waist, I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw not my husband, but my betrayer. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone in his face. I wanted to demand why, but I did none of those things. Instead, I smiled weakly, forcing my lips to curl upward though my insides were collapsing. Because some small, dangerous voice inside me whispered, "Don't show your hand."
Not yet.
That night, I cried silently into my pillow while he slept beside me. My tears soaked the sheets, my body shook with grief, but Daniel slept peacefully, like a man who had no guilt left to feel. The betrayal carved itself into my bones. I thought of the nights I had cooked for him, waited for him, prayed for him. The love I had poured into him was now nothing more than a cruel joke. And beneath the sorrow, something new began to grow. Not hope, not forgiveness, but revenge. The seed planted itself in me that night. I thought of the way my mother used to say, "Never let a man think he can ruin you. If he breaks you, break him back." I had always thought she was too harsh, too bitter. But now her words became a lifeline. I could not let Daniel walk away untouched. I could not allow him to play with my life while I stood silent.
No.
If he wanted to play games, I would show him how dangerous they could become. The first stage was planning. It began quietly, me watching him more closely, memorizing his routines. Where he went after work, which nights he claimed to be busy, how often he texted when he thought I wasn't looking. Each detail became a thread in the web I was weaving around him. I started saving small pieces of evidence, screenshots of texts, copies of receipts, little fragments of truth that he thought he could bury. All the while, I smiled at him, cooked his meals, played the loving wife. But inside, I was sharpening my knives. The danger of my plan was always clear. What if someone finds out it was me? If I exposed him the wrong way, people would call me bitter. If I struck too hard, too openly, he could twist the story, make me the villain. Revenge was a tightrope, and one wrong step could send me crashing. But the thought of doing nothing, of letting him win, was unbearable. The first move came almost by accident. Daniel was careless one afternoon, leaving his email open on our laptop. I sat down to close it, but the words on the screen caught my eye. It was a flight confirmation for two. He was planning a weekend trip with her. I should have felt destroyed. Instead, I felt calm, cold, focused. Because finally, I had an opportunity. That night, while he slept, I booked a call with the hotel under his name and updated the reservation. Instead of a couple suite, I changed it to 2 single beds, then requested a note to be left at the front desk saying, "We hope you and your sister enjoy your stay." The petty strike made me smile for the first time in weeks. It wasn't enough, not even close, but it was the beginning. When the weekend arrived, Daniel returned angrier than I had seen him in years. His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. I asked sweetly, "How was your trip?" "Don't," he snapped. "Don't play games with me." I tilted my head, innocent. "What games?" He glared at me, but he said nothing more. Because if he accused me, he'd have to admit why he was really away. And that was my first victory. Small, but powerful. The web had begun to tighten. But victories like these came at a price. Every move I made risked exposure. If Daniel grew suspicious, he might turn cruel. If others found out, they might not believe me. They might call me jealous, dramatic, unstable. I was walking on fire. Yet every time I doubted myself, I remembered the message on his phone. The perfume, the lies. And the fire inside me only burned hotter. This was only the beginning. The storm had not yet arrived. But I was ready. The first strike had been sweet. Petty, yes, but sweet. For the first time since the betrayal, I had felt powerful again. Like I wasn't just a helpless wife crying into her pillow. Like I could control something in the storm. But power is addictive. And once you taste it, you want more. Daniel didn't change after the ruined trip. If anything, he became more secretive, more careful. His phone never left his hand. He locked his laptop with new passwords. He stayed late at work, even more often. But his caution only fueled me. The more he tried to hide, the more determined I became to drag everything into the light. And I didn't just want to expose him. I wanted to hurt him. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. One evening, I overheard a conversation when Daniel thought I wasn't home. His voice was low, sharp, the kind of tone he only used when he was lying. "Don't call me on this number. Use the other one." "Yeah, the one I gave you last week. We can't risk her finding out." Her voice crackled faintly through the line. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. The truth was already clear. Daniel had a second phone. A secret number. I searched for it obsessively over the next few days. Drawers, jacket pockets, his car. And then finally I found it, tucked inside his gym bag, hidden beneath a spare pair of sneakers. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of every lie he had ever told me. When I powered it on, my hands trembled. And there it was, proof. Message after message. Pictures. Plans. Declarations of love he had never spoken to me in months. My chest tightened. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall, to scream, to collapse. But instead, I took pictures of everything. Every text. Every detail. Evidence. And then I put it back exactly where I found it, because he had no idea I knew. And that was my weapon. The danger grew sharper now. What if he noticed the phone had been touched? What if he traced the photos back to me? Every step I took could backfire, and if it did, I would be the one destroyed. But the thought of silence was worse. And my revenge was no longer just about hurting him. It was about survival. It was about proving I wasn't weak. My second move had to be bigger. And this time, it wouldn't just sting. It would cut deep. I waited until his company dinner. Daniel had begged me not to come, insisting it would be boring. Which, of course, only made me determined to attend. I walked into the event dressed in the red dress he always said was too much. Heads turned. Daniel's face tightened when he saw me, but he couldn't object, not in front of his colleagues. So I smiled sweetly, took his arm, and played the perfect wife. Until dessert. That was when I slipped away to the restroom, pulled out my phone, and connected it to the projector's Bluetooth system. A single click, and the evidence I had saved from his second phone began flashing across the big screen at the front of the ballroom. Messages. Photos. Plans for weekend trips that were not with me. The room went silent. Forks dropped. Gasps echoed. And Daniel's face, oh, his face, went white with horror. I stood in the back, my heart hammering, my palms slick with sweat. If anyone saw me holding my phone, they could connect the dots. If Daniel realized I was behind it, he might lash out later. But in that moment, I didn't care. Because for once, everyone saw him as I did. The charming, successful man with the perfect smile was stripped bare. Just another liar, another cheater. And it was glorious. Of course, the fallout was immediate. He stormed out of the event, his reputation fractured, whispers chasing him through the crowd. At home, he slammed doors, threw accusations, demanded to know if I had been the one behind it. I played dumb, wide-eyed, innocent. Why would I do that, Daniel? I was in the bathroom. He stared at me, breathing hard, suspicion in his eyes, but he had no proof. And without proof, he had nothing. But I had everything. The ripples spread further than I imagined. His company looked at him differently now. His friends, too, some pulled away, others whispered behind his back. Even his mistress must have seen because his second phone buzzed less and less over the next week. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt complete. But I didn't. The taste of revenge was sharp and addictive, but it didn't fill the hollow inside me. If anything, it made me hungrier. Because one question haunted me as I lay awake at night. What if this isn't enough? That was the most dangerous part of revenge. The way it consumes you. The way it turns your hurt into fire that never stops burning. I told myself I only needed one more strike. One final move to end this game. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Once you start down this path, it's almost impossible to stop. And I wasn't done yet. The silence after the company dinner was strange. Daniel barely spoke to me, his jaw tight whenever we crossed paths at home. But he didn't confront me again, which made him more dangerous. Because Daniel wasn't the type to forgive. He was the type to wait, to calculate, to strike back when I least expected it. And every time he glanced at me, I felt it, the suspicion in his eyes. Like he was quietly asking himself, is she the one who humiliated me? Days bled into weeks. I watched him unravel. He drank more, slept less. His phone calls became frantic whispers, always behind closed doors. He snapped at colleagues, at friends, even at his own family. It should have been enough. I should have been satisfied watching him crumble. But revenge has a way of pulling you deeper. Every victory feels like a drug, and withdrawal isn't an option. Then something happened I didn't expect. Daniel's mother called me. She told me everything, she whispered. All the whispers at the dinner. I never believed Daniel could do something like that. Her voice cracked. But if it's true, my God, how could he betray you this way? I froze. No one was supposed to know I was involved. So I did the only thing I could. I played the victim. Yes, I whispered, tears coming easily now. It's true. He lied to me. For months. I didn't know how to tell anyone. Her sympathy poured through the phone, warm and comforting. For a moment, I almost felt guilty. Almost. But then I realized something. I had just gained an ally. That night, lying awake, I understood something new. Revenge wasn't only about exposure, it was about isolation. If I could turn people against him, if I could make him feel as alone as he had made me, then maybe, just maybe, I'd feel whole again. And so I began planting seeds. Quiet conversations with friends. Half-truths slipped into family dinners. Stories framed in such a way that I always looked like the loyal, heartbroken wife, while Daniel became the selfish, cheating husband. It was risky. If anyone discovered my hand in it, my mask would shatter. But the danger made it intoxicating. Daniel felt the shift too. His friends stopped calling. His mother stopped defending him. Even his boss began treating him like a liability. And I could see it in his face, the anger, the confusion, the desperation. He was trapped in a cage he didn't even realize I had built. But with every win, a part of me twisted tighter. Because revenge isn't clean. It's messy. It stains you. And late at night, when the house was quiet, I asked myself, what if I'm becoming worse than him? The breaking point came at a family gathering. Daniel's mother invited us both to dinner. I almost didn't go, fearing the tension. But something inside me whispered, go, watch him squirm. So I went. The evening started politely enough. Small talk, forced smiles. But as the wine flowed, the cracks widened. Finally, his mother turned to him. Daniel, she said, her voice steady but sharp, why don't you tell us where you really were last weekend? He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. My heart raced. I hadn't expected her to confront him so directly. I was at a conference, he muttered. But his mother's eyes cut through the lie. You've been saying that for months. Do you take us all for fools? The room went silent. Every eye turned to him. And for the first time, Daniel looked small, trapped, exposed. Afterward, he cornered me in the kitchen, his voice low and dangerous. You, he hissed. This is your doing, isn't it? I met his glare, my heart pounding. I don't know what you're talking about, but my calm only enraged him further. His hand slammed against the counter beside me, the sound sharp enough to make me flinch. If I find out it was you, he whispered, you'll regret it. That was the moment I realized something chilling. This wasn't just a game anymore. It wasn't about exposure or humiliation. It was war. And wars don't end until someone loses everything. That night, as I lay awake, my mind churned with possibilities. I had already ruined his reputation. I had already turned his family against him. But it wasn't enough. I wanted the final blow, the one that would make him fall so hard he'd never recover. Yet with every new plan, the danger loomed larger. If he ever connected the dots, if he ever uncovered the truth, it wouldn't just be my marriage on the line. It would be me. And so, the seed of my final move was planted. Riskier, darker, deadlier. Because now, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. And I wasn't going to lose. The night after Daniel's threat, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my head. If I find out it was you, you'll regret it. For the first time since I began, fear outweighed satisfaction. Because deep down, I knew he was right. If he connected the dots, if he realized that every humiliation, every whisper, every loss he suffered traced back to me, he wouldn't stop until he destroyed me. And Daniel had the resources, the charm, and the ruthlessness to do it. But fear has a way of sharpening resolve. Instead of backing down, I doubled down. I started digging deeper into his life. Bank records, text messages, the receipts he tried to hide. Piece by piece, I assembled a puzzle. And what I found was worse than I ever imagined. Daniel wasn't just unfaithful. He was reckless. He had drained joint accounts to fund his late nights. He had borrowed money from friends, promising to repay what he never intended to. And his little black book? A collection of women who thought they were the only one. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud. It was deception on a scale that could ruin him completely. And suddenly, I knew exactly how to end this. The plan wasn't simple. It couldn't be. One mistake, and I'd be exposed. But I realized something. Daniel's biggest weakness wasn't his infidelity. It was his pride. He needed people to admire him. He craved respect, validation, the illusion of being the perfect man. So, I decided to use that pride as the weapon that would cut him down. I started small. A few anonymous messages to his colleagues. A quiet leak to one of his so-called friends. Nothing direct, nothing traceable, but enough to plant suspicion. Then I moved bigger. The files I had gathered, screenshots of his messages, proof of missing funds, photos of him with women. I organized them into a neat little package. Anonymous, untraceable, ready to drop at the right moment. And as I prepared, my mind whispered the same dangerous question over and over. What if someone finds out it was me? The risk was suffocating. If Daniel discovered my hand in this, it wouldn't just be my revenge at stake. It would be my safety. The tension at home grew unbearable. Daniel's eyes followed me like a predator circling prey. He didn't have proof yet, but I could feel it. He suspected me more with each passing day. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I'd wake up to find him standing at the bedroom window, staring out into the darkness. Silent, still, as if waiting for something. And I wondered, was he plotting too? The final push came from someone I least expected. One of Daniel's lovers, Emily, a younger woman from his office, showed up at my door. Tears streaked her face as she stammered. He lied to me. Said you were separated. Said you didn't care. But he used me, just like everyone else. I stared at her, my chest tight. She was broken, the same way I had been broken. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. Daniel wasn't just my enemy. He was a disease, hurting everyone who touched him. He didn't deserve quiet revenge. He deserved exposure. A reckoning so loud the world would hear it. But Emily's visit also brought new danger. Because Daniel would know she had come to me. And if he connected the dots, if he realized I was the one pulling strings behind the curtain, the storm would break. So I acted fast. That night, I sent the package. Emails with attachments. Anonymous drops to people who mattered most in his world. His boss. His mother. His closest friends. Even the board members of the company he was trying to impress. I pressed send and sat there in the dark, my hands trembling. It was done. There was no one doing it now. The next day, chaos erupted. Phone calls rang nonstop. Daniel stormed through the house, his voice a mixture of rage and panic. How dare they? He shouted. Who would do this to me? He smashed a glass against the wall, the shards scattering like sharp reminders of his unraveling world. And I stood there, quiet, my face calm, though my heart thundered. Because I knew this was only the beginning. But the deeper the chaos spread, the closer Daniel came to the truth. I could see it in the way he looked at me now, sharp, calculating, dangerous. He hadn't said it out loud yet, but his silence screamed it. It was you. And suddenly, I realized that the revenge I had planted was no longer safe behind the shadows. Because Daniel was coming for me, and the only way out was through. The morning after the package was sent, the house felt like a battlefield. Daniel paced the living room, his phone glued to his ear, his voice rising with each call. No, it's not true. Those photos are fake. Someone is trying to ruin me. But the panic in his voice betrayed him. Every call ended the same way. Someone hanging up, someone cutting ties, someone no longer believing him. I watched in silence, my coffee untouched, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to smile. This was the justice I had craved. But another part trembled with fear. Because every time his eyes met mine, they lingered. Too long, too sharp. He didn't have proof yet, but I could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his fists curled. He knew. He just didn't know how to prove it. By noon, His empire was in ashes. His boss suspended him. Friends stopped answering his calls. Even his own mother sent him a cold message. I'm disappointed in you. Don't contact me until you've fixed this mess. Daniel threw his phone against the wall, the screen shattering into jagged pieces. And then he turned to me. You, he hissed, his voice low and venomous. You're the only one who hates me enough to do this. I forced my face into a mask of confusion. Daniel, what are you talking about? But my voice shook, and I knew he heard it. That night, the house became a prison. He followed me from room to room. He watched me cook, watched me fold laundry, watched me breathe. I felt like prey under the gaze of a predator who had already decided how the hunt would end. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift of shadows outside the window made my skin crawl. I locked the bedroom door, but even then, I didn't feel safe. The next day, the retaliation began. My car tires were slashed. My work email mysteriously locked. My closest friend, Sarah, called me in tears. Daniel had sent her twisted half-truths about me, trying to turn her against me. You need to be careful, Sarah whispered. He sounds dangerous. I already knew. The more Daniel lost, the more desperate he became. And desperation in him was terrifying. One evening, he cornered me in the kitchen. His eyes were bloodshot, his breath heavy with alcohol. Tell me the truth, he growled, slamming his hand against the counter. Was it you? Did you do this to me? My hands shook, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. Why would I ruin my own life, Daniel? Your destruction destroys me too. It was a gamble, a dangerous mix of half-truth and denial. He stared at me, his face unreadable, before storming out into the night. I exhaled shakily, knowing it wasn't over. And it wasn't, because the first move of revenge had hit. But the ripples were spreading faster than I imagined. Daniel's company began an internal investigation. Women from his past started speaking up. One of them even filed a formal complaint. The scandal grew too big to contain. And the more the world saw the truth, the more Daniel shrank into himself, violent, unstable, unpredictable. The danger to me became suffocating. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every time I walked to my car, I checked the shadows. Every time Daniel's voice boomed from another room, I braced myself for impact. Because the line between his anger at the world and his anger at me was thinning. And I realized, if he couldn't destroy the evidence, he would destroy me. One night, I found him in the garage, standing beside his car, his hand gripping a wrench so tightly his knuckles were white. When he saw me, he smiled, a slow, terrifying smile. You know what they say, he whispered. If you burn everything down, there's nothing left to lose. A chill ran through me, because I understood what he meant. He wasn't just fighting for reputation anymore. He was cornered. And a cornered man was capable of anything. That night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed. It was Emily. Be careful. He knows it was you. He's planning something. My chest tightened. The walls felt like they were closing in. The revenge I had dreamed of, the justice I had longed for, had become a ticking time bomb. And I was standing right at the center of the blast. I stared at the ceiling, my hands clenched in the sheets, my heart pounding like a drum. Daniel's life was in ruins, but so was mine. And the real question wasn't whether he would strike back. It was when, because the war between us had only just begun. The storm broke on a Thursday night. Daniel had been drinking since morning. The empty bottles clinked on the coffee table, glass against glass like cruel laughter. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. But his voice was razor sharp. You think I'm stupid, don't you? He said, leaning forward, his gaze locked on me. You think I don't know it was you? I tried to stay calm, my voice steady. Daniel, you're paranoid. The world is crumbling because of your lies, not mine. He slammed his fist onto the table. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. Don't you dare talk to me like that. Everything I've lost is because of you. Silence pressed between us. Heavy, suffocating. I didn't deny it this time. Instead, I leaned forward too, my words low, deliberate. You're right. His eyes widened, confusion flickering across his face. And then rage. You. Yes. I cut him off. I sent the photos. I sent the emails. I exposed you for what you are. He froze, his chest heaving. I didn't stop. You used me. You lied to me. You cheated. And you thought you'd never pay for it. But now, look at you. Stripped bare. Everyone sees the monster you are. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, dangerously, he stood up. His shadow stretched across the room, swallowing me whole. You ruined me, he whispered. You think you've won. But you've just lit the fire. He stepped closer. I didn't flinch. Stay away from me, Daniel. His laugh was bitter, hollow. Or what? You'll destroy me again? There's nothing left. Nothing you can take from me anymore. My heart pounded. Because he was right. He had nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing left to lose was the most dangerous of all. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel's eyes darted to it, then back to me. Who's helping you? He spat. Who's feeding you information? Because you couldn't have done this alone. I didn't answer. My silence was an answer in itself. Emily's warning flashed in my mind. Be careful. He knows it was you. He's planning something. And now I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't planning anymore. He was ready. I rose from my chair, every muscle tight, my voice firm but shaking. This ends tonight. He smirked, tilting his head. Finally, we agree on something. The confrontation spiraled fast. Words cut deeper than knives. You were never enough for me. You never deserved me. You broke everything we had. Each line from him, venomous. Each reply from me, sharp as glass. You destroyed us long before I did. You made me your victim, but I refused to stay silent. You think you're powerful, but without your lies, you're nothing. Finally, he snapped. In one swift motion, he grabbed the shattered bottle from the table, its jagged edge catching the dim light. My breath caught in my throat. His hand shook, but his eyes were steady. I should have ended this months ago. The room tilted, my chest tightening. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. But I wasn't helpless. I took a slow step back, my voice calm, controlled. Think carefully, Daniel. One move, just one, and you're done. You think the world has abandoned you now? Wait until they see what you really are. He hesitated. For the first time that night, uncertainty flickered across his face. I pressed harder. You're not untouchable. You're a scandal, a criminal. And if you hurt me, you'll be a murderer too. Do you really want that headline? The words hit him. I saw it. The tremor in his hand. The falter in his glare. But then his rage surged back. He raised the bottle. And I realized words alone wouldn't save me. That's when the front door burst open. Daniel. Emily's voice. She rushed inside, her eyes widening at the scene, the bottle in his hand, me cornered against the wall. Daniel froze. Emily's presence cracked the moment wide open, like a spotlight in a dark theater. And suddenly, I saw my chance. I straightened, my voice clear, cutting through the air like a blade. Do it, Daniel. Show her. Show everyone exactly what you are. The words hung there, sharp, merciless. Daniel's hand trembled. His eyes darted between me and Emily. The bottle slipped from his grip, shattering on the floor. And in that instant, I knew. The climax wasn't just about exposing him. It was about breaking him completely. And I wasn't done yet. The silence after the bottle shattered was deafening. Emily's wide eyes flickered between us, panic etched across her face. Daniel, what have you done? He didn't answer. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, the fury in his body trembling without release. I stepped forward, refusing to show fear. Go ahead, Daniel. Tell her. Tell her everything. Or should I? Emily's lips parted. Tell me what? Her voice cracked. She had been my closest friend, the only one who warned me of Daniel's schemes when I was too blind to see. And now, she deserved to know the truth too. Daniel tried to speak, but I cut him off. He cheated. He lied. He stole. Every bit of our marriage was a performance. And when I uncovered the truth, when I finally refused to stay silent, he turned violent. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Her gaze snapped to Daniel, searching his face for denial, for explanation. But Daniel said nothing. Because what defense did he have left? Everything had already been revealed. Emily whispered, almost to herself. You swore to me it was just stress, that you'd never hurt her. Daniel snarled. Don't listen to her. She's twisting everything. But the way he said it, desperate, cracking, only confirmed my words. I seized the moment. Check my phone, Emily. The emails, the photos, the bank transfers. Everything is there. His lies, his affairs, his theft. You'll see. Emily didn't hesitate. She grabbed my phone from the table. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled, her face paling more with every swipe. And then, her tears came. You monster, she whispered. Her voice shook with disgust. All this time, you made me believe she was paranoid. You gaslight both of us. Daniel took a step forward. Emily, please. You don't understand. No, she screamed, her voice slicing through the room. I understand perfectly. You're a fraud, a coward, and you don't deserve either of us. The words broke him more than anything I had said. Daniel staggered back, as if her rejection was the final nail in his coffin. His face twisted, his bravado cracking into something raw, pitiful. Everything I did was for us, he stammered, looking at me. To give us a better life. I laughed bitterly. No, Daniel. Everything you did was for yourself. And now look around. You've lost it all. Emily's presence turned the tide. I wasn't just the betrayed wife anymore. I was the accuser with a witness. The fear that had haunted me, what if someone finds out it was me, now shifted. Because I wanted someone to know. I wanted everyone to know. And tonight it would begin. I pulled out the small voice recorder from my pocket. Daniel's eyes widened. You recorded this? I smiled coldly. Every word, every threat, every confession. Emily gasped. You planned this? Yes, I said, my voice sharp. I had to. He never would have admitted anything otherwise. And now he's finally exposed. Daniel lunged forward, his hand outstretched for the recorder. But Emily stepped between us, her voice steel. Touch her, and I swear I'll call the police right now. Daniel froze. For the first time since the night began, I saw true fear in his eyes. Not anger, not arrogance. Fear. Because he knew his empire of lies was collapsing. I raised the recorder, pressing stop. This, I said firmly, is only the beginning. Tomorrow, the world will hear the truth. Daniel's voice cracked. You wouldn't dare. I leaned in, close enough for him to feel the venom in my whisper. Watch me. The room felt like fire and ice, burning with rage, frozen with shock. Emily grabbed my hand. Come on, let's get out of here. I nodded, turning my back on Daniel for the first time. Not with fear, but with power. Because he no longer held me captive. The story was mine now. As we walked out, Daniel's voice echoed behind us, desperate, broken. You'll regret this. Both of you. But the sound no longer terrified me. It only confirmed what I already knew. The revenge wasn't over. It had only just begun. The next morning, the sky was heavy with gray clouds, as if the world itself anticipated a storm. Emily sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, her hands still trembling. You're really going to do this, aren't you? She asked softly. I nodded. Yes. Tonight, at his company's gala. The place he built his reputation, the one where he parades himself like a saint. That's where the truth will fall. Daniel's company's annual gala was his pride. Hundreds of partners, clients, and board members attended every year. He spent months planning the perfect image. And tonight, I plan to destroy it in a single blow. Emily bit her lip. What if it backfires? What if they think you're bitter? That you're making it up? I slid the recorder across the table. Not when they hear this. His own words will bury him. She hesitated, then whispered, Then I'll stand with you. For a moment, I felt a pang in my chest gratitude. Betrayal had almost destroyed me, but now it had given me an unexpected ally. The gala sparkled with wealth and power. Glittering chandeliers, expensive suits, laughter echoing through the hall. Daniel moved through the crowd like a king, his smile practiced, his charm polished. But I saw the flicker in his eyes when he spotted me at the entrance. His mask cracked. He hadn't expected me here. Not after last night. He approached quickly, his voice a strained whisper. What are you doing here? I smiled sweetly. Oh, just here to support my husband. Isn't that what good wives do? His jaw tightened. This isn't the place. Exactly, I said. Which makes it perfect. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. Laughter rose and fell like waves. And then the moment arrived. Daniel stepped on stage, microphone in hand, his voice carrying through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. This year has been extraordinary. I rose from my seat. Extraordinary indeed, I interrupted. The room fell silent. Heads turned. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Daniel froze, gripping the podium. What are you doing? He hissed through clenched teeth. I walked toward the stage, my heels clicking against the polished floor. Sharing the truth, I said, loud enough for every ear in the room to hear. Gasps. Whispers. 100 curious eyes locked on us. Emily rose behind me, her presence silent but powerful. I climbed the steps and stood beside him, my hand gripping the recorder hidden in my purse. You all see Daniel as the perfect businessman, the devoted husband, I began. But behind this mask lies a man who betrayed, lied, and stole, not just from me, but from those who trusted him most. Daniel's face turned crimson. This is nonsense, he barked, trying to laugh it off. She's unstable, ignore her. But his voice cracked, and that crack was all I needed. I pressed play. The hall filled with Daniel's voice. Cold, angry, desperate. Everything I did was for myself. You'll regret this. Both of you. Murmurs turned into horrified gasps. Another clip, him confessing to his affairs. To draining our joint accounts. To threatening me. The crowd shifted, their admiration melting into disgust. Board members exchanged looks. Clients shook their heads. One man near the front whispered loudly enough to be heard. My God, We trusted this man with millions. Daniel lunged forward, trying to snatch the recorder, but Emily stepped in, blocking him. Touch her, she snapped, and everyone here will see exactly what kind of man you are. The weight of exposure crushed him. The charm, the arrogance, the carefully built empire, it all shattered in seconds. Please, Daniel stammered, his voice trembling. She's twisting it. This is all a trap. But no one listened, because the evidence spoke louder than any excuse. I looked out at the crowd, my voice steady. You deserve to know the truth. And tonight you have it. The room erupted in chaos. Some people stormed out. Others demanded answers. Board members whispered about emergency meetings. And Daniel? He stood in the middle of it all, a fallen king, stripped of his crown. I turned to him one last time. You built your life on lies, Daniel. Now you'll watch it crumble. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. Not of sorrow, but of pure, helpless rage. And I knew my revenge had cut him deeper than any knife could. The room no longer belonged to Daniel. It belonged to chaos. Board members clustered in small circles, whispering furiously. Clients pulled out their phones, already texting, already planning exits. The once celebratory gala had transformed into a courtroom, and Daniel stood as the accused. I stepped down from the stage, my head held high, my heart pounding with a strange, intoxicating rhythm. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being silenced. Daniel stumbled after me, his voice a hoarse whisper. You don't know what you've done. You think this ruins me? I'll rebuild. I always do. I turned slowly, meeting his desperate eyes. No, Daniel, not this time. Because you built everything on lies, and lies don't rebuild. They collapse. Emily slipped her arm through mine, grounding me. The crowd parted, letting us pass, but their eyes never left Daniel. I heard fragments of their murmurs. Fraud, manipulation, disgusting, and then the cruelest cut of all. Pathetic. Daniel heard it too. His jaw clenched, his pride bleeding faster than his reputation. At the edge of the hall, a man in a tailored suit intercepted us. He was one of the board directors, stern, cold, with the weight of power in his gaze. Mrs. Carter, he said, addressing me with surprising respect. Do you have copies of those recordings? Yes, I replied without hesitation. They're safe. His eyes flickered, calculating. Then you've done us all a service tonight. This fraud can't continue. Behind us, Daniel shouted. Fraud? Are you insane? I built this company. You wouldn't exist without me. But his words fell into a void. No one turned. No one defended him. The very people he had once controlled with charm and fear now saw him for what he was. A man cornered. Outside, the cool night air struck my face like a rebirth. Emily let out a long breath. You did it. You actually did it. But the tremor in her voice mirrored my own heart. Victory felt sharp, but sharp things could cut both ways. The following morning, news broke. Headlines screamed. Scandal at Carter Enterprises Gala. CEO accused of fraud and infidelity. Photos of Daniel's pale, furious face filled the internet. Clips of his recorded confessions circulated like wildfire. By noon, investors had pulled out. By evening, the board had called for an emergency vote. And by nightfall, Daniel Carter was no longer CEO. He called me that night. His voice was raw, broken, dripping with venom. You think you've won? All you've done is drag yourself into this mess. Do you think they'll respect you? They'll chew you up and spit you out. I listened quietly, letting his rage burn out. Then I whispered, No, Daniel. They'll finally see me, not as your shadow, but as the woman who brought you down. And I ended the call. The days that followed were surreal. Friends who had once envied our marriage avoided Daniel's name. Neighbors whispered, some pitying me, others secretly admiring my strength. But inside, my heart was not so easily settled. Because revenge was sweet, yes, but it was also heavy. 1 week later, I saw him again. Not in a boardroom, not at a gala, but at a small cafe, hunched over a cup of black coffee, his once flawless suit wrinkled, his hair unkempt. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. This wasn't the Daniel who had strutted through life untouchable. This was a man who had fallen and had no idea how to get up. He looked up, eyes red, voice flat. Why? I tilted my head. You know why. His lips trembled. You could have just left. You didn't have to ruin me. I leaned closer, my voice steady. You ruined yourself, Daniel. I just made sure the world saw it. His hand shook as he set the cup down. You'll regret this. Not because I'll rise again, but because revenge never fills the hole it leaves behind. For a second, his words cut deeper than I expected, but I forced a smile. Maybe. But at least now the hole isn't yours to hide behind anymore. When I walked away from that cafe, my steps were lighter. But somewhere in my chest, an ache remained. Because the truth was simple. Destroying Daniel had freed me. But it had also left me staring at the pieces of my own life, wondering how to rebuild without him. And still, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Daniel Carter would never again walk through this world as a king. He was just a man now. And I had been the one to strip him of his crown. The cafe encounter haunted me, not because I pitied Daniel, but because he was right. Revenge didn't erase the emptiness. It only magnified it. Still, I wasn't finished. Because while his empire had crumbled, Daniel still had one weapon left, his charm. And men like him always found ways to crawl back. I couldn't allow that. 3 days later, I stood at the courthouse steps with a folder in my hands. Inside it were the documents I had carefully gathered for months. Evidence of Daniel's embezzlement, hidden accounts, and illegal tax manipulations. I had exposed his personal betrayals. Now, I would expose his criminal ones. When the prosecutor's office reviewed the files, their reaction told me everything. "Where did you get these?" one of them asked, eyes narrowing. I smiled faintly. From years of being ignored. He left his sins lying around. He thought I was too blind to notice. The man's lips curved. "Well, Mrs. Carter, your blindness might just put him behind bars." The next week was a storm. News outlets didn't just report Daniel's fall from grace, they dissected it. Articles revealed offshore accounts, insider trading whispers, fraudulent charity donations. Every skeleton in his closet was dragged into the daylight. Daniel wasn't just a disgraced CEO anymore. He was a criminal suspect. The night before his arrest, he showed up at my doorstep. Uninvited. Desperate. His once commanding figure now looked frail, almost ghostly. "Please," he rasped, "don't do this. You've already taken everything. The company, the respect, my name, what's left?" I stood in the doorway, blocking his entry. "You took my life," I said coldly. "You stole my years, my trust, my love. So what's left? Justice." His eyes glistened with a bitterness that was almost sorrow. "You think they'll thank you? You think the world applauds women who destroy their husbands? They'll call you vindictive, bitter, a monster." I let his words hang in the air. Then I whispered, "I don't care what they call me. I care that they'll never call you powerful again." And I closed the door. The next morning, cameras captured Daniel being led away in handcuffs. His jaw was tight, his pride desperately clinging to the scraps of dignity. But the world saw what I saw. Not a king, not a genius, just a liar finally caught. Reporters hounded me for interviews. Neighbors watched me with wide eyes. Some pitied him, some pitied me. But I didn't answer their questions. Because this wasn't about fame. It was about closure. A week later, I attended the board's final meeting as a guest. The chairman addressed the room. "Daniel Carter's leadership has been terminated indefinitely. The company will restructure under new management." Applause followed, but I didn't clap. I only sat still, my hands folded, feeling the quiet ripple of finality settle inside me. That night, Emily and I celebrated quietly at home. She poured me a glass of wine and raised her glass. "To freedom," she said. I touched my glass to hers. To endings. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the kind of ending fairy tales promised. It was heavier, darker, because revenge had freed me from Daniel, but it had also tied me to him forever in the story of his downfall. Still, when I closed my eyes that night, I slept without fear. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of secrets waiting to surface. I wasn't afraid of the lies collapsing. I wasn't afraid of him. Daniel Carter was gone, and I had been the one to erase him. The morning after Daniel's arrest, the city felt strangely quiet to me. The newspapers screamed his downfall, flashing his mugshot across every front page, but inside my apartment, it was silent. No shouting matches, no late-night arguments, no whispers of betrayal crawling under my skin. Just quiet, and yet the quiet didn't feel like peace. It felt like standing in the wreckage of a storm, staring at the pieces scattered across the ground, and realizing you had no idea how to rebuild. For years, Daniel had been the center of my world, whether I adored him or despised him. My routines revolved around him, my emotions orbited his moods, my identity had been tied to being his wife. Now he was gone, and all that was left was me. The world had its opinions. Some people applauded me, whispering words like brave, strong, resilient. They admired how I exposed him, how I didn't stay silent like so many women do. Others sneered. They called me vindictive, bitter, cold-hearted. I had destroyed not just Daniel, but the image of the successful, charming man they all once envied. But their voices didn't matter as much as the one that haunted me most, my own. Because in the stillness of my home, I asked myself the question no headline would ever print. Had I won or had I lost just as much as he did? Practical life became messy. Daniel's assets were frozen, which meant I had to dig through my own savings to pay for simple things. The apartment we had once shared felt like a museum of ghosts. Every piece of furniture carried a memory. Every corner whispered a lie. So I left. I rented a small 2-bedroom place on the edge of the city. Nothing glamorous. No floor-to-ceiling windows, no marble countertops, no velvet rugs. Just a modest, sunlit apartment where I could start fresh. The first night I slept there, I curled up on a simple bed with plain sheets and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of exhaustion. For the first time in years, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't a wife upholding an image. I wasn't covering for a cheating husband. I was just me, and that was terrifying. Revenge had given me justice, yes. It had stripped Daniel of his power, his wealth, his reputation. It had put him exactly where he deserved to be. But revenge doesn't sew up wounds. It doesn't erase nights spent doubting yourself. It doesn't heal the part of you that whispers, if I was enough, would he have loved me differently? Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't just say something about the betrayer. It digs its claws into the betrayed and leaves behind poison long after the battle is over. I found myself jumping whenever I saw a man smile too easily. I distrusted charm, distrusted kindness, distrusted anyone who made promises. I had built a shield around myself without even realizing it. And though it protected me, it also caged me. Weeks passed. Daniel's trial began and the media circus exploded again. I chose not to attend. Watching him face justice was satisfying, but I had already done my part. Sitting in the courtroom, reliving it all, would only tether me to him longer. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. Emily came over often, helping me unpack boxes, filling the apartment with laughter. She was my anchor through it all, reminding me that life wasn't just pain and revenge. One night, she found me sitting on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "You don't look happy," she said softly. I gave her a tired smile. "I'm free, but freedom feels lonelier than I thought." She placed her hand over mine. Because freedom isn't about leaving something behind. It's about finding what you're running toward. And you haven't found that yet. Her words lingered in my mind for days. So I started small. I took a class in digital design, a passion I had buried while I played the perfect wife. I joined a local community group, volunteering at events, meeting people who didn't know me as Daniel Carter's ex-wife, but simply as me. Slowly, my world became mine again. My laughter returned in pieces. My trust didn't heal overnight, but I learned to let people prove themselves before I locked them out. And somewhere in that messy, fragile rebuilding, I realized something powerful. Revenge had ended Daniel's story in my life, but it couldn't write my next chapter. Only I could do that. Months later, I received a letter. From prison. From him. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was short. His handwriting was shaky. "I hate you for what you did, but I also know you were the only one who could have done it. You destroyed me, and maybe I deserved it. But don't let me haunt you. Don't let me live in your head forever. If you do, then I've still won." I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands. And for the first time, I realized he was right. If I let him linger in my thoughts, replaying every betrayal, every lie, every revenge, I'd never truly escape him. That night, I burned the letter, watched it curl into ash and float away. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was release. The day his sentencing was announced, I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I didn't feel much of anything. Instead, I went to the beach, alone. I stood by the water, the wind tangling my hair, the waves erasing footprints in the sand. And I thought about everything that had happened. The girl who once believed in fairy tales, the wife who once believed in loyalty, the woman who finally chose herself over a liar. Revenge had been a chapter in my story, but it wasn't the ending. As I watched the horizon stretch endlessly before me, I understood something I hadn't before. Peace doesn't come from seeing someone else fall. Peace comes when you stop letting their fall define your rise. Did I feel peace? Not completely. Some scars never fade. Some wounds always throb when you press them too hard. But I felt stronger. I felt alive. I felt like, for the first time, my life was truly mine to live. And maybe that was better than peace. Maybe that was freedom. So, if you ask me whether revenge satisfied me or left me scarred, the answer is simple. It did both. But if you ask me whether I regret it, I don't. Because sometimes the only way to reclaim your life is to burn the bridge behind you and never look back. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more emotional English stories that teach life lessons. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.